Hello, week 10 human rights policing class. Um, we have to read chapter 6 of the book, Human Rights Policing, Reimagining Law Enforcement in the 21st Century. This is the last chapter of the book, called Policy Suggestions, Human Rights, and the Future of Policing. Provide a summary of the past chapters and have a little section on kindness. And it's something that I've learned a lot about just from talking to various community members who talk about human rights policing. And, obviously they would rather a cop be rude and not arrest them than a cop be kind, and put them in some cage somewhere. So most people would rather their freedom and not be locked up in a cage or incarcerated or arrested. You know, rather than being kind and then getting incarcerated. So I write about that. And the point is that simply a police officer being kind or showing respect is not good enough. That's just the basic bare minimum of how all human beings should treat each other. And so human rights goes far beyond kindness. And so give that chapter a good read. Um, and I also, make examples of, you know, even in the military, that people don't want a kind and benevolent government. They don't want or a government that virtue signals and talks about democracy and spreading peace and freedom while bombs are dropping over your head. And so um, that's so I give some examples of how kindness is simply not good enough. It's action that matters. Action is what always matters. Words mean nothing. Action is everything. And so also talk about police officers developing the blasé attitude. And this comes from Zimmel's brilliant article, A Metropolis and Mental Life, where he talks about how people that live in cities like New York or Berlin, how they're always oversaturated with so much external stimuli that the body builds kind of an internal self-defense mechanism to protect you from this onslaught of external stimuli. And it makes people come across as blasé or indifferent, but really it's just kind of a natural self-defense mechanism that the body develops when living a cosmopolitan urban life. And I remember one time going to uh, school. I was going to graduate classes in New York City, and I was living in Brooklyn. I was going to Manhattan for the New School for Social Research in Greenwich Village, and I'm working, as a public school teacher in a jail in Brooklyn. I'm attending graduate classes full time. I'm writing a PhD dissertation. I'm working part time as an adjunct professor at City University of New York colleges. And my life is very busy, and plus I'm living a New York life, going out a lot, exploring the city, just kind of doing everything. And I remember a young woman got hit by a car, was completely mangled, looked dead, just body destroyed. And I remember I looked, I noticed, and I just kind of felt nothing. I just kept on going. And it wasn't until later that day where I realized, that a human being had been hurt, possibly even killed in such a tragic way, and that had felt nothing. And I thought, am I an awful person? What is this? And then I recalled my readings of George Zimmel's that blasé attitude, where I just developed a self-defense mechanism to protect me from this constant onslaught of stimuli that you receive when living in a place like um, New York. We are always paying attention. Danger here, danger there. Homeless person. Something's going to happen here. Something's going to got to step over this. Oh, possible danger over here. All these lights come over here. Cars, traffic. Oh, there's someone acting strange over here. I mean, you just get all of this information, and you have to process it. And some of it you just have to cancel out. And so it's very interesting kind of psychological phenomenon that develops among the urban dweller. He also talks about Zimmel anyway. He also talks about the rural consciousness of people like from here in La Crosse and Wisconsin, and how that's very different from the consciousness of someone who lives in a city. So it's good work if you ever want to read it. It's you can get it easily online. George Zimmel's Metropolis and Mental Life. My father also had a very similar story that you'll read about in the book, where it was like his very first day on the job. He gets a call for service. He There's a gunshot. There was a shooting. My father arrives on the scene with his partner. My father sees a man shot laying on the ground. He comes up, goes up to him, he looks at him, uh, sees that he's shot pretty badly, and he says, "Hey man, who did this to you? I'll get him. I'll get him for you." And the guy laying there, bleeding, dying, says, "No, man, I'll get him myself." And my father looks at him and says, "I don't think it's going to happen." And the guy died right there in my father's arms. My father's first day on the job, he feels like a mercenary from another country policing a Black community here in the United States. He's completely shocked. He's traumatized. And his partner looks and goes, "Man, we have another call for service. What are you doing? Don't be such a wimp. Let's go." And so you can see how easily cops who are also given all this external stimuli develop this blasé type of attitude. And I argue that it's this blasé attitude that is one of the greatest threats to human rights policing for the individual police officer, and that they have to find a way to overcome this blasé attitude. And so we talk about that in the chapter. Finally, I end the book on policy suggestions to help create human rights policing, because keep in mind, up until this point, we're talking about how individual officers can implement human rights policing in their everyday interaction with community members. But as a sociologist, I'm much more concerned with structural changes. And so what I would like to do is completely revamp or radically transform the institution of law enforcement to be from a primarily a social control institution to one that protects the human rights of all people, especially the most vulnerable people in our society. And in order to do that, I have policy suggestions, and I talk about general policy suggestions at the national level, ending the forever wars, and international military bases. The United States has over 800 military bases around the world. What are we doing with all of these military bases all around the world, threatening countries all over? I'll be right there. And mass violence against the earth and non-human animals, and the war on drugs and decriminalize all drugs, and for-profit prisons, abolish the death penalty, universal health care for all, and homelessness, because homelessness plus vacant housing equals society fails. $20 minimum wage at minimum, and welfare for the rich programs and tax the rich, and Citizens United in corporate lobbying. If you don't know what Citizens United is, you need to find that out. Very important. And corporate influence on social policy, national support for labor unions, and create a major third party that represents the people, since the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are both warmongers, and they have abandoned the American people long ago, and they've both been bought by corporations, and they only serve corporations. They have no interest to protect the people, the citizens. And so democracy in this country was lost decades ago, and it's now a corporate run government. Even the government is basically a corporation. And so if we're going to ever have to be free from this type of corporate tyranny, this type of inverted fascism that we live in, maybe a third party could be one step in the right direction outside of the radical transformation of our entire society. And then I talk about some policy changes for policing, and here we talk about increasing funding for the police, actually not decreasing funding, higher standards in hiring and promotion, community-directed policing, which means that the community tells the police how they want to be policed, not the other way around, standard training in human rights, civilian community oversight board, limit asset forfeiture, end the war on drugs, of course, and decriminalize all drugs. Of course, it's one of the most obvious policies that most people can get behind. Maybe not Democrats, but that most people can get behind. Of course, Republicans haven't been good on this either. Limit no-knock warrants, limited qualified immunity, eliminate police from traffic enforcement, lessen the burden on police officers, eliminate non-criminal calls for service, demilitarize most police, significantly reduce police from making arrests at schools, decriminalize kids, and reallocate resources. And I give an explanation of each one of those. And your two-part discussion board focuses on that. And as always, I limited it to where you can talk about in the part 1, 3 out of the 5 topics. And that's about looking at kindness versus human rights, the blasé attitude. It also asks for personal reflection, and also for you to talk about human agency and human rights implementation and the future direction of human rights policing. And then part two, you're able to pick to make some of your arguments for or against some of the policy proposals that I put forth at a national or policy level. So I like when people debate me and critique me, and offer new ideas and challenge me and challenge each other. So keep on doing that. And as always, look forward to reading your discussion boards. And as always, I'll give you extensive feedback, as I always do. And so otherwise, keep up the good work, stay strong, and here's to another strong week. Take care.